If you thought involving affordable sports cars belonged back in history, then you'll find Toyota's GT86 a welcome breath of fresh air. This revised version isn't any faster than the original, but the suspension's stiffer, the steering's sharper, and it's been made a little bit smarter both inside and out. Otherwise, things are as before. Developed and desired by enthusiasts, the GT86 remains a benchmark in the compact coupe sector, a masterclass in driving dynamics.
They knew what sports cars were back in the 50s. Not a lot of power, not a lot of grip, but an awful lot of fun. Now, if you see that as the classic automotive era, then it may be that you're not completely up to date with the quality of performance machines you'll find the time you live in. Some of them are supercars, but not all. Here, for example, is a classic in the making that you might very well be able to put on your own driveway. Its name? Toyota's GT86. Now, for too long, enthusiasts have believed what the car makers have told them, that they needed more power, more grip, more fancy intervening electronics. That argument looks good on paper, but it can often be curiously unsatisfying out on the road. If that's been your experience in buying an affordable and enthusiast-orientated but practical sports car, then you might agree it's time to go back to basics. And that is exactly what Toyota did when back in 2012 it launched this car, the Hachiroku, which translates as H6 in Japanese. 4 factors that governed its development: lightweight, modest, normally aspirated power, rear-wheel drive and narrow tyres. Lap times, the engineers decided, were unimportant. What mattered here was driving enjoyment. You might have forgotten just how much of a heritage affordable Toyota sports cars have in providing that. From the tiny S800 of 1962 to the GT2000 later that decade, the Celica of the 70s and the mid-engined MR2 of the 80s and 90s. The GT86 has proved to be a worthy successor to those cars, but there's always room for improvement. And at the end of 2016, Toyota moved to freshen its appeal with a package of changes that delivered a smarter look, a revised cockpit, and even sharper handling. And that's the car we're going to look at here. So, what's it like? Well, let's push the start button, stick it into first gear, and find out. If you happen to be familiar with the original version of this car, then you'll be wanting to know what's changed here. And the answer is that nothing really fundamental is different, but GT86 regulars will immediately note the sharper steering, which makes this Toyota feel more responsive when you're pushing on through a bend. And it's still brilliant at communicating what the front wheels are doing and exactly how much grip you have to play with. All of this is aided by stiffer suspension, which reduces understeer and allows the car to cling to its line at cornering speeds that would have seen the earlier model pushing straight on. Despite the firmer spring settings, though, the damping retains a basic suppleness, which might surprise those who are expecting a raw drift machine. In fact, on decent surfaces, the GT86 actually rides with a really expensive polish. And covering the engineering updates, we should also mention the addition of a selectable track mode that allows the driver to better tap into the GT86's full potential by adjusting the level of stability and traction control, including a fully off option. Now, apparently, Toyota's engineers developed this track feature with the benefit of data gained from this car's racing performances in the Nürburgring 24-hour race. Otherwise, things are much as they were, which means that, as before, there's a beautiful symmetry to this car, even when it comes to the statistics, all exactly as they were with the original model. A 2000cc Boxer engine puts out around 200 bhp, while developing just over 200 newton meters of torque to pull along a total weight of just under 1,200 kilos. Then there's the 86s, a reference to the inspiration of Toyota's legendary AE86 drift car, and a figure that just happens to be the millimetric dimension of the engine's bore and stroke and the diameter of the chrome-tipped exhaust through which it breathes. Now, the power plant in question isn't Toyota's. This car, you see, comes out of a joint venture with Subaru, whose near-identical BRZ model provides the high-revving, normally aspirated flat 4 that sits beneath the bonnet. It was selected because it was small and light, and it could be mounted nearest to the ground for a centre of gravity that's lower than that of supercars like Ferrari's 458, which is why, on the move, your rear end feels as if it's skimming a few inches off the tarmac. It all means that here you're an integral part of the performance package, just as you would be in a go-kart. And it's when you really have to work if you're going to get meaningful progress. You see, like all boxer engines, this one isn't exactly over-endowed with pulling power, having to be revved and revved hard before it'll deliver. Which is why on a test drive around the block, this Toyota really won't feel very fast at all. Nothing very much starts to happen until you get to around 6,500 RPM. But from then on, you enter a twilight zone where the car just throws itself towards the horizon and eventually runs out of puff at a nosebleed 7,450 RPM. The soundtrack, yeah, it could be better. Chief Engineer Tetsuya Tada says he wants to improve it, but it's a pleasing one nonetheless to accompany a rest to 62 miles an hour time of 7.6 seconds on the way to 140 miles an hour. To give you some perspective, that is a fraction less performance than you'd get from a comparable 2-litre turboed VW Scirocco or Audi TT, but don't worry about that. As we've said, this car isn't about numbers or lap times or top trump comparisons. It's all about driver feel and tarmac tactility. True, it may lose the odd traffic light Grand Prix against a comparably powered front-ranking hot hatch, but we'd wager the GT86 driver won't care. Now, we've already touched upon some of the reasons why. Here are a few more. First, the driving position. Now, as we said, you sit low down, grasping the smallest steering wheel Toyota fits to any production car, and it's one that's positioned nicely upright so you can flick easily through the corners from lock to lock without any trouble. You'll also be flicking through the gearbox, a 6-speed unit that the engineers spent simply ages trying to get right, and they have. It is brilliant. Now, please don't spoil things by specifying the optional sprint-sapping 6-speed automatic. Now, we should also talk about traction and grip. Now, there's not a lot, and you wouldn't expect there to be, given that quite intentionally the engineers have specified this car to run on essentially the same skinny tyres as a feeble Toyota Prius. Now, this won't do much for your lap times on a track day at Silverstone, but it's a brilliant recipe for fun on every deserted roundabout, especially in the wet, where power slides are yours for the asking, aided by a near-perfect 53-47 front-to-rear weight distribution. Here, you can adjust your line with your right foot in a way that other comparable sports coupes could only dream about. And in a GT86, you can do all that, safe in the knowledge that there's a limited slip differential and an advanced stability control system to gather things up, if you're one of those people with greater ambition than skill. Ultimately, that is perhaps the best thing about this car, the way that it's been engineered to please both performance driving novices and experts alike, which is not an easy trick to pull off. At first glance, you might wonder what all the fuss is about. The styling, which hasn't changed much with this revised model, remains smart, but it's hardly show-stopping, with classic front-engine, rear-drive proportions, delivering a long bonnet and a rear-set cabin. It's all little change from the prototype that preceded this model's original launch, the GT86 show car that Toyota unveiled at the 2011 Geneva Motor Show, 12 months before production started at Subaru's Gunma plant in Japan. Their GT86 models roll down the same production lines as their all but identical Subaru BRZ counterparts. The only real visual difference between the two cars being this trapezoidal front grille section. Now, that is part of a front end that features a sharper look with this revised model, with smarter headlamp units that create a stronger horizontal emphasis. LEDs are now used for both the low and the high beams, and the turn indicators have been relocated from the front bumper to within the headlamp clusters, and they're presented as a range of individual orange LEDs that harmonise with the angled arrangement of the white daytime running lights. It's at the rear, though, that we think the styling looks most menacing, with twin chrome-tipped tailpipes poking purposefully out from either side of this rear diffuser, each 86mm in diameter. The taillights have been reworked too, the object again being to generate a stronger horizontal effect. That's something further embellished by LED illumination and new light guides. Go for this pricier Pro version and you also have the option of an aggressive wing-type rear spoiler. Otherwise, things are much as before, which means you get the same lovely detailing. Now take this 86 badge, featuring a pair of horizontally opposed pistons and a representation of 4 tyres in what's claimed to be a perfect 4-wheel drift. Already you've got the idea behind this car and of Toyota's enthusiasm for it. Hardly anything in this design is shared with any of the brand's other models, and that is an almost unheard of approach in this day and age. Everything about it is geared around driving. Even the quality of the cabin, where heavyweight, high-quality plastics are mostly notable by their absence. On the move, you'll notice that soundproofing's been kept to a minimum too, all in the interests of saving weight. Now, if you don't like that, then you'd probably be better off buying something like an Audi TT. We know which we'd rather have. As before, the driving position is low and sporty, placing your posterior 7mm nearer to the tarmac than it would be in a Porsche Cayman. In this improved model, the instrument panel has a one-piece design with a black finish and slicker carbon fibre pattern detailing. It's all part of an enhanced cockpit that's been revised to create what Toyota hopes is more of a connected feel between driver and car. And central to this is the smarter 3-spoke steering wheel, the smallest yet designed for a production Toyota, with a cross-section that's apparently precision calculated to provide the best possible grip and feel. Auxiliary audio and display controls have been added to the wheel, and as a finishing touch, the centre boss features a prominent silver 86 logo. A new 4.2-inch TFT multi-information display is included in the instrument binnacle's triple dial arrangement, with a switchable menu that provides the usual journey, distance and fuel economy information, plus more performance-focused data such as power and torque curves, a stopwatch and a G-force monitor. In a small but very telling detail, the tachometer has been reorientated so that 7,000 RPM, the point of peak power delivery, sits invitingly at the top of the dial. Otherwise, it's as you were, which means you get the usual Toyota Touch infotainment screen in the centre of the dash. What this cabin lacks in luxury appointment, it makes up for with detailed delicacy. Take the soft knee pads built into the door trim and the centre console to offer extra support when you're cornering hard. Or this tiny moulding built into the dash top, reflecting in the windscreen. It's there to allow the driver to accurately position the centre of the car at a glance when the car's oversteering. Combine all this with a lovely 3-dial instrument pack and the best driving position you could imagine, and you've got a design that'll delight every proper petrol head. Now, it is a 2x2, so you do get these tiny rear seats that motoring journalists without small children usually moan about, but which we find really useful, if only for slinging your jacket onto. And a reasonably sized boot, or at least it is once you fold those back seats down to extend the standard 243-litre capacity to a space so usable it'll accommodate a trolley jack and 4 replacement wheels and tyres. So ideal for track day types then. You'll pay around £26,000 for a manual model, with the automatic adding another £1,500 to that price. That's a fraction more than the amount that Subaru will ask of you for their virtually identical BRZ. GT86 buyers get the choice of 2 variants, a standard version and this Pro model, which commands a premium of around £1,100. Now, both can be specified with a 6-speed paddle-shift auto gearbox for an extra £1,500 if you want it. Go for the Pro derivative and you'll be offered the no-cost option of an aggressive wing-type rear spoiler too. Now, if you want us to put GT86 pricing into perspective, well, two key comparably performing coupe rivals spring to mind around this price point. Pay a fraction more and you can get a BMW 220i Coupe Sport. For a fraction less, you can have a Volkswagen Scirocco GT 2-litre TSI. Now, obviously, there are other similarly powerful coupe options in the class, so if you're prepared to compromise on driving satisfaction, a comparably performing Kia Proceed GT would save you around £2,500. While if image is everything, then the base 1.8 TFSI petrol version of Audi's TT Coupe will cost about £1,500 more than Toyota's asking here. In terms of hot hatches, well, you'll pay around £1,000 less for something like a Peugeot 308 GT and about £2,000 more for a Volkswagen Golf GTI. If, having considered all those alternatives, you conclude that it is a GT86 that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous Toyota's been when it comes to standard equipment. So, let's take a look at that. Now, this improved GT86 model rides on smarter 10-spoke 17-inch alloys with a machined finish, and all variants now get LED technology for the adaptive headlamps, the daytime running lights and the tail lamps, as well as key driving stuff that includes high-performance brake discs and pads, plus a limited slip differential for better cornering and start-off traction. Other standard features include front fog lamps, auto headlights, electric heated door mirrors with a folding function, chrome-tipped exhaust pipes, an alarm immobiliser and a proper space saver spare wheel. Inside you'll find sports seats, dual zone climate control, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, aluminium sports pedals, cruise control and smart entry with push-button start. Plus there's leather trim with contrasting red stitching for the steering wheel, for the gear knob and for the handbrake. Infotainment is provided by an upgraded Toyota Touch 2 multimedia system that works via a larger 6.1-inch touchscreen and which offers Bluetooth, USB and aux-in connectivity, plus a 6-speaker stereo with a DAB tuner. Is it worth stretching up to this plusher Pro version, the one you have to get the big rear wing? Well, possibly. Do that and your GT86 will come with heated front seats featuring upgraded leather and Alcantara upholstery. Plus there's a leather driver's armrest and a sporting buckskin pattern suede effect finish for the dashboard and the door trims. On to options. Most potential buyers will probably want to upgrade the infotainment system to Toyota Touch 2 with Go status. Now that's a setup that not only gives you satellite navigation with 3 years of map updates, but also access to online services and social media channels. The package will also give you speed camera warnings, useful that in this car, plus access to Google local search, so on the move you can find out everything from live parking information to fuel prices and weather forecasts. What else? Well, there's a tempting JBL sound pack, including a premium amplifier. The metallic or pearlescent paint options will be popular. There are rear parking sensors if you need them, plus the protective film available for the door handles and the rear bumper would be useful. And you'll probably want to upgrade the look of the seats with the red detailing package that Toyota offers. Now that's an option with both the cloth and the leather finishes. Otherwise, the main options are aesthetic ones. The door mirrors can be fitted out with carbon covers, and there are roof, bonnet and side graphics available in either matte black or glossy silver. On to safety. Now, a little disappointingly, Toyota hasn't taken the opportunity to add in the various radar-driven safety sense features you'll find fitted to more mundane models in the range. But, of course, all the basics are well covered. As you expect, there's anti-lock brakes with brake assist for emergency stops, and those will be advertised to following motorists by automatically flashing brake lights. Plus, there's a VSC Plus dynamic stability control system. This one with 3 modes, so you can lessen its intervention if you're feeling brave. Passive safety features include twin front side and curtain airbags, plus a driver's knee bag, and there's hill start assist, a tyre pressure warning system, anti-whiplash head restraints, a decoupling brake pedal mechanism, and ISOFIX child seat fixings on the 2 rear seats. They might be tempted by this car and then wonder if the GT86 is going to cost you an arm and a leg in depreciation compared to something with a premium badge, say an Audi TT Coupe. I mean, a car with 4 rings on the bonnet has got to be a safer home for your money, right? Well, wrong as it happens. Buy an entry-level TT and it'll be worth 49% of its new price 3 years down the road. BMW's 220i Coupe, well, that'll retain 43%. The GT86, try 58% for size. Significant customer demand has swelled those residuals healthily. In fact, we don't think there's been a car launched in recent years that has been aimed at the used market quite like the GT86. At this car's original launch, Chief Engineer Tetsuya Tada went as far as urging Toyota to ensure that the early model sold should move on to the used market as quickly as possible, so that younger people might be able to buy them second hand and then customize them to their tastes. There'll be plenty of that in future years as this car gets further into its production life. The Japanese brand has released all of this model's development plans to tuners and to aftermarket equipment developers to help generate a momentum that it hopes will create a GT86 cult. In fact, Tada-san rued the fact that the car had to be quite so expensive in the first place, but at the same time, he didn't want to compromise and make a half-baked product that was clearly built down to a cost. And the news keeps on getting better when you come to examine day-to-day running costs. The GT86 is reasonably economical, helped by a lean 1200 kilogram curb weight. That's around 100 kilos lighter than you'd expect a 2-litre coupe in this class to be. Yes, we know that the published figures are usually a bit of a farce that you'd never get anywhere near, but Toyota quotes 36.2 mpg on the combined cycle, and every person we know who's run one has reported averages of over 30 mpg. And we know quite a few leadfoots, let me tell you. Emissions are not quite so clever at 181 grams per kilometre for the manual car. Rather surprisingly, the automatic model significantly improves on the stick-shift version's figures, managing 39.8 mpg and 164 grams per kilometre of CO2. What else? Well, insurance is rated Group 34, and finally, all of this is backed up by Toyota's excellent aftermarket care package that includes a 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty. What's not to like? So, the world's most compact 4-seat sports car continues to be a tempting proposition for driving enthusiasts. Could it be any better? Well, we're going to find out in the future, because Toyota's planning to bring out a continual stream of derivations. We're not sure, though, that any of them are ultimately going to be any better than this standard model, usefully improved in this updated form. Of course, as before, it could be faster, grippier, quieter, and of better quality inside. But to be honest, wouldn't really want it to be. All of those things would dilute the very qualities that make this GT86 what it is. Sports cars always used to be this way: light, low-powered and modestly rubbered. We had fun in them then, and we can have fun in this one now. The chassis is excellent, the controls are brilliant, the driving position is nigh on perfect, and the engine, if not hourly exciting, is revvy and fun. As for the changes made to this revised model, well, they're welcome, but if you didn't like this car previously, then they won't be enough to make you desire one now. For the record, though, we like the steering even more than we did before, and the cabin no longer looks and feels quite so low rent, so that's progress of a sort. In summary then, the GT86 remains a sports car to savour. One of those rare machines that involves you so much you don't need to be travelling at 3-figure speeds to have fantastic fun. Factor in the affordable running costs and the high residuals, and it becomes a very tempting proposition indeed. In years to come, we think it'll be seen as a landmark car for Toyota.